Are you recording yet? Let's call the meeting to order before roll call, and if you'll go ahead and record. You're recording, good, okay. I'll explain the process we're gonna go through for the recording and for anyone who's attending online. The only thing on the agenda today, besides the swearing in of a new member and any possible audience business, is the public hearings that were continued from Monday. So all three are related. They're all three related to the same annexation and two properties that are side by side. Andrew will go over all those in the staff report. And the way we're going to approach it as a commission is the first item, staff report will cover the information for all three items since they're so interrelated. And for each item, we will still have an opportunity for questions of staff for that specific item. We'll still have an opportunity for public comment for that specific item. So we'll go through the motions for all three, but the first one will be front loaded with the information we're going to need. So, but if we need to repeat something, Andrew can have the presentation ready. We can go through it again or parts of it again if we need to. All right, with that in mind, we can go ahead and do a roll call, please.
Chair Evers.
Present.
Vice Chair Schwartz. Commissioner Knapp.
Present.
Commissioner Drystad.
Present.
And Commissioner Scott.
Present.
Okay. We do have a spot for audience business, but I do not believe we have anyone here in person. Is there anyone online for audience business? No. Okay, great. So next up is swearing in new PCD Commissioner Julie Jacobs.
If you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Julie Jacobs,
I, Julie Jacobs,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the Town of Lyons Municipal Code,
and the Town of Lyons Municipal Code,
and faithfully perform the duties of the office
and faithfully perform the duties of the office
of Planning Community Development Commission
of the Planning and Community Development Commission
of the Town of Lyons,
of the Town of Lyons,
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Luckily, I had a teacher.
No, that's the hardest part. Is
I was like,
So your application goes to Holly and then Holly shares it with me, but I don't think any of the other commissioners know anything about what you put in there. So if there's anything you want to share with us, it's available publicly. Please
yeah.
feel free to, otherwise.
I mean, I've been in Lyons for 7 years now. I immediately joined the LCF board because I wanted to do something. And then through that, rotated off of that, got onto HHSC because I wanted to do something else. And then joined the IGA task force because I wanted to do something else. And now here I am. And this just kind of seems like the natural progression. I'm a psychologist and I went to law school. And so I have a little bit of real estate law background. I did I clerked for a real estate law firm and worked there for about a year before I moved into the mental health law space. So this is not at all foreign for me. And I just love Lyons and want to do everything I can to serve.
Cool. Well, thank you for doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can comment that Julie's been an outstanding contributor at the IGA task force.
Excellent. Any questions for Julie before we move on? Okay. With that done, we'll move into the public hearings. And again, we have 4 items all related to the same. I'm sorry, 3 items all related to the same case. It is item number 4.1.
Yeah.
So staff report will be done by Planner Bowen, and he'll cover the material for all 3 of the items coming up. And we'll go through them all procedurally. So I'll go step by step after he's done. So you can take it away, sir.
Thank you. Let me just share it. I should be sharing. Let's see.
Attorney Dittman, while Andrew's bringing up his presentation, is there anything procedurally that we need to acknowledge about the continuance of this from Monday?
No, I think only that it was continued from, can you guys hear me okay? I'm in between meetings, so I'm doing this from my car. Okay. So I think, it was already noticed it was gonna be continued. There's nothing really we have to do to signify that. It'll be in the record through this discussion that it was continued for Monday, from Monday because of the notice issues. And so, I think if you want to go through the procedure for the public hearings, we can do that, but otherwise I think you're good to go.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Planner Bruin.
All right, so, what is our first item? So again, we're here, we've got two resolutions in front of us to offer up a recommendation to the BOT for the zoning designation of these parcels to be annexed. And then I'll go into the annexation as well. But the first, so I'll kick it off with the first, is the rezoning of 4545 U Highway. So the case name, as it's been called and is reflected in all of the documents that you all have, is considered the Tebow annexation. And again, this is a petition for annexation and zoning designation. The applicants are James Dixon and Dylan Schmidt. And the project addresses, and for this hearing individually, is 4545 U Highway. And just want to clear up, because we received questions. There is on GIS, these can be the 4545 through 4549. But as far as kind of legal descriptions and how it is recorded in the assessor's office, we are just calling this 4545 U Highway, and that's the front parcel, and 4602 Highlands Drive, that's the rear parcel. And let me just pull up the staff report. So it's these two parcels, as was stated on Monday. The first parcel kind of spans from kind of Highlands Drive intersection out to those existing structures that kind of the face U Highway. And then the second is an agricultural. It's got the greenhouses on the backside. So and again, the property owner is Tebow LLC. The legal descriptions, and I'm not going to read those into the record, but they are provided both in the resolutions and in the staff report. Again, as far as site vicinity, we already went through, but I did provide a street view snip just so we all understand which property we're discussing. So as far as the request for zoning designation, the front property is has been proposed to be zoned commercial eastern corridor. And the second, the rear parcel is pitted to be or proposed to be R3. And this is also reflected in the application packet. It's also important to note as part of this process that no hard development plan is following this process. We do have, we will be meeting with a possible tenant, a gas station, to set kind of an exploratory pre-app sometime in the near future. But that's not, it's really just a meeting to discuss kind of the town's how to move forward in this process. There's nothing kind of in hand that can be provided. The important lines municipal code references that kind of govern these decisions are section 161520, general rezoning, and chapter 15, annexation. And all of the approval criteria for this commission to consider and the BOT are reflected within those code sections. So as far as the history goes, these two parcels and kind of all of the parcels within the Eastern Corridor or the East St. Vrain sub area, it's also reflected in some of our planning documents. They've been a part of the planning process for a long time, and we've expected that these would come in at some point. And in fact, in order to bring in the others, these are kind of a linchpin to that because we need the continuity. So our code and state law requires that 1/6 of the property has to be contiguous to existing town jurisdiction. So
1/6 of the property line, okay, I was reading that now, 1/6.
of the property line, yes.
So there, okay, yeah.
But both of these are reflected within Lions Thrive Comprehensive Plan. There's some other utility plans that have been explored in that area. And again, they've been a part of the planning conversation of Lions for quite some time. So as far as application neighbor notices and referrals, all notices and referrals were both sent out on July 24th, 2024. We sent neighborhood notices certified mail. I've had one comment come from a tenant of this property, but have not received any notices from surrounding neighborhood, or surrounding neighborhoods. And, the concern that's kind of been expressed by the tenants, of course, they're in Boulder County right now, is it's kind of what does this mean for them? That's truly, a civil matter. We can do what we can, but kind of how that gets reflected through this process kind of falls back on a kind of tenant landlord relationships. But as far as the referrals go, they have been sent out to all county and special districts, all boards and commissions and technical agencies. And it's important to note that Boulder County will also have to hold a hearing and agree, and move on this, the annexation itself as well. But then also all technical agencies have also been notified, and have provided comment. We'll be meeting early next week to kind of discuss some of the current uses that are on the property and how those are reflected kind of in our water situation, and then also kind of fire, health and safety. And those unfortunately just aren't ready at this time, but they will be presented to the Board of Trustees. And all of that will be included in an annexation agreement that has to follow and be approved by the Board of Trustees prior to the annexation going into effect. So as far as the proposed project timeline, again, we're wanting to act on this annexation and zoning designation, but again, there's no true push for development at this point. So I've included in your packet, and it's far too large to capture, but it's just the draft zoning map that has been provided. It's currently, the front parcel is currently zoned commercial in the front, and agricultural in the back. And I did have a misstep at that last meeting. Just did not understand where Boulder County's kind of re-annexation of our 3 mile plan, where it finally landed, but it's zoned that way right now. But again, CEC is proposed in the front, R3 is proposed in the back. And then on the next page is the proposed annexation map. Right now, there's no lot line adjustments or subdivisions requested at this time. Once the property is to be developed and once tenants are chosen, I envision that there will be some lot line adjustments and minor subdivision of these lots. Just to figure out how that space is going to work when it actually gets developed. So I'll just run through these quickly. Hopefully you all have gone through the code, but I have provided both, and I'll read through the zoning once first, and then the annexation criteria. But in order, let's see. So in order to decide if a zoning designation is kind of jives with all of our planning efforts in the community. We have, I believe it's 6 criteria that need to be kind of considered by both the PCDC and the BOT. So number 1 is to correct or a manifest error in an ordinance established the zoning for a specific property. This, of course, is not applicable just because it's never been within the town's jurisdiction. Number 2, to rezone an area or extend the boundary of an existing district because of changed or changing conditions in a particular area or the town generally. So again, what has been proposed is consistent with our future land use map and with the comprehensive plan. There will be, as you all know, and it may or may affect all of the zoning in that area. We will be looking, our future land use map seeks to have one singular mixed use zone for this entire corridor, but that's of course a work in progress. So the zoning that has been requested at this point is the most applicable and most cohesive with what is there right now. As far as the front goes, and then again, as part of Lions Thrive, the housing assessment and the addendum that has been added to the housing assessment, and kind of conversations around the IGA and where growth needs to occur and where density should occur. it's always been a priority for that area to have more densified housing. So R3 zoning is also consistent, with that as well. The third criteria is the land to be rezoned is inconsistent with the policies and goals of the comprehensive plan. I put in A, this criterion is not applicable, but it is indeed, it is consistent with our land use plan. Number 4 is the proposed rezoning is necessary to provide land for a municipal related use. I will not read through this all. There's not proposed municipal or public service zoning on this lot. There's not going to be any, outside of connecting to the town's infrastructure. There's not to be any, or there will be public improvements, but not public utilities or publicly owned utilities on this lot. And we're not gonna put any pump stations or anything like that, so. And then number 5, the area requested for rezoning has changed or is changing to such degree that it is in the public interest to encourage development or redevelopment of the area, and the rezoning will be consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. I believe I've already said this before, but again, they're consistent with the growth patterns that both the community just in a broad perspective, but then all of our planning efforts align with this as well. And then lastly, a rezoning to a planned unit development overlay district is requested to encourage innovative and creative design and promote a mix of land uses in development. As of now, this criterion is not applicable because we're not going, it's a straight zone. There's no PVC or PUDR that's being requested through this proposal. So just to give a bit of context about kind of the recent rezoning for Boulder County, and again, I don't know, and we'll hear from the applicant if this is a result of that rezoning. But it is, if this building were to stay in Boulder County, once they wanted to redevelop or substantially alter those structures, they would revert to agricultural zoning, which would seemingly outlaw or not make non-permitted uses for all of these uses. So in order to kind of redevelop this property, it's integral that they come into the town. And that's important because our code does speak to more urbanized services, stormwater, drainage, utility, hooking into public infrastructure. Boulder County just does not have those regulations and that framework set up because they're in the business of kind of outside of municipal limits, more rural development patterns. So the end product in coming under the town zoning will certainly align, and it gives us, the town and the community, more control to make sure that the product that is developed at some point in the future aligns better with our planning efforts. So as far as the staff analysis, I've kind of already given that. Again, it's cohesive with what we're trying to do. And this is also within the 2012 IGA. So this is indeed an annexable property already. There's no changes to the IGA or the IGA that it will hopefully be adopted in the near future. There's no changes that need to occur to make this happen. My staff recommendation is that the staff recommends, sorry, this is a bit redundant, but staff recommends that the PCDC advise the BOT to approve both the petition for annexation and the requests for the zoning designation. I've added one condition just because we're working through this process, but my only recommended condition is that an annexation agreement shall be approved by the BOT prior to the recordation of any annexation documents. Again, that's a requirement, but since it's a work in progress, I just wanted to make sure that the PCDC and staff has that base covered and sets that expectation for the applicant. With that, that's my staff report. I tried to keep it lean, so if you have any questions, just let me know.
Please, Commissioner Tristad.
Just one question. I was looking at the zoning map and referencing, in the sort of a lower left-hand corner, if it's sideways. That's the highway.
Mhm.
What's the approximate distance between the edge of the highway? In other words, what's the right of
The right of
way
way.
from the edge of the highway to the edge of the property be annexed?
I would have to look at the plat or a survey, but I can, if that's direction that I need to give the BOT, I can certainly get that from Aaron as well.
Well, it's just information.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking is, in previous looks at that whole area, there has been talk about an access road.
Mm-hmm.
And, was just more curiosity than a specific concern about this particular proposal, but
Sure.
awareness or information about how this might have an impact on the ability to or not to have an access road.
Yeah, so in early conversations with the applicant, again, they'll chime in a bit. There has been kind of a greater conversation with neighboring property owners about how that access will work. You know, as this area does densify, Highlands Drive is quite small, that bridge is quite small. And those are some of the concerns that have come from, the fire district. DOT, we haven't received their referral yet, but driveway permits or curb cuts, depending on what you call them, those are handled through the state. So all of those, once actual development is to occur on that lot, there will be a whole nother conversation about how these properties can be integrated. If driveway permits need to be consolidated, I imagine that will be the case, but I'm not sure, just because it's a pretty wide apron at this point. But with just a straight annexation without any, we're just looking at bringing town into the land into the town. It's hard for CDOT or really anyone to really make clear recommendations or referrals. But again, there will be, once development is proposed, there will be a robust development plan, and this will be a major development plan. So we'll go in front of the PCDC, out for referral to all technical agencies, which includes CDOT. And in working with CDOT and other DOTs, you know, around in almost every state, you hardly ever get hard and fast guidance at this stage, just because there's really nothing to latch on to. I hope that answers your question. I know it's a bit ambiguous.
My question is informational, it's not a
Sure.
concern or objection in any way. But just historically, there have been at least 2, maybe 3 different iterations that CDOT has provided to the town relative to access to it. And one of them did contemplate, if I remember correctly, did contemplate an access road across the front of those areas. It was just more curiosity than anything. Is there adequate space in the, and that,
The right of way.
in terms of the right of way, yeah. Or between, and there may be other alternatives
Sure.
for accomplishing that too. And I understand that that be part of the development plan.
Yeah.
Not the annexation plan. More curiosity and informational so that when that comes along, we'll have that background information.
Yeah, and that'll be the important part about us kind of reconvening and really getting kind of, you know, we have a lot of planning in this area, but there's not, you know, a really consolidated sub-area plan for this area. We do have a few designs for connectivity, but again, the applicant's not beholden to those at this time. It will be in the development plan, and hopefully it will come after we have kind of at least the mixed use zone. We might not have the kind of design guidelines and all that, but at least circulation and connectivity will be a heavy part of that code language, and we'll be able to kind of address those concerns.
I will add to that, or maybe tangentially spin off of it. We're requesting an annexation agreement, right, to be provided to the board of trustees.
Yes, it'll be, we're drafting the agreement right now. It's very utilities and water rights based.
Okay. Well, it could be access considered too.
Yes.
That's appropriate for an annexation agreement.
Yeah. So on the planning side, what will be added to the annexation agreement will be compliance with all relevant standards, but also sidewalks, streets, that when development does come, they have to fall in line with whatever planning documents we have.
Well, I was thinking maybe it's worth considering. I would trust staff's expertise for this, but like it's worth considering whether access engineering needs to be conducted on the applicant side for annexation, or excuse me, for the as part of the annexation agreement for the development process. So not just to have, say, a landscape architect or a civil engineer or an architect design access, but actually have a sub-consultant for access engineering. The Department of Transportation is required to do.
Yeah, they already. they've
I
already
will say
gone
though,
through, Yeah,
I'll finish here in a second. I will say on the ISP, there is reference to State Highway 66 right of way as varies, which is interesting. But then there's also reference in front of this property, an accepted portion and recorded for the Department of Highways from 1968.
can you tell me where that is?
It's in the application packet. If you go to the bottom to the annexation links,
Okay.
there's an ISP link.
Okay.
It's near the bottom. It's called ISP Ute Highway.pdf number 8 on 4.3. It's not a very interesting document, other than it shows those recorded right of ways. I will say though, in the ISP, if it's important to annexation, in our agreement, it doesn't show any right of way for the creek. And I would imagine there absolutely is some kind of right of way, not right of way, what I'm trying to say, an easement for the creek. So I don't know if that's important to record on this for the annexation, but it's worth asking, that staff to know whether or not we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's.
Yeah, and we also have several ditches that convene close to this property as well. So there's, and that, part of the reason why, we put a 2-week, which it resulted in a 3-week hold on this application, was the applicant was also, considering buying, purchasing the Rheingold property, just to the, east or west.
Yeah.
But just the foreseen CDOT and creek and all of the ditches that come through, they have decided not to pursue that to the best of my knowledge. And
Yeah, and I just think for staff, and again, this is a staff question, since the right of way is not listed on this ISP, I just wonder, again, just to make sure we have good information in our annexation agreement, if it's worth asking for this ISP to be updated with the ditch easement, though I don't know if that is. I have questions about the ditch if we get there, and then also what the Colorado State Highway 66 right of way actually is, and not just reference to a 1968 recorded ordinance, which may not even exist anymore.
Sure.
And then along those lines, there's access across the ditch, which I know from recent endeavors is not always straightforward.
Sure.
And I just wondered if those are recorded in a way that we would want to have in our annexation agreement.
Okay.
I would imagine Highland Drive, if it's part of this property and it's not considered a private road, would be then part of our maintenance agreement, right? The town would maintain it. Be good to know whether that's true or not.
Okay.
And if we have to maintain that, do we also have to maintain those bridges across the ditch, which could be a big problem?
Sure.
And if, whatever, staff knows more about this than I do, but if it's worth exploring, if it's fuzzy, getting it solid and then understanding, whether or not we agree to maintaining a road and bridges over a ditch, or whether that becomes the burden of the owner during annexation. But I think those are annexation agreement type things.
Okay.
Thanks for hearing me out on that.
Yeah, no
Other
worries.
boring stuff.
Thank you for the input.
Is there anything else around that particular topic? Because I want to pivot to something else unless someone has something to add. Pivoting to zoning. So the CEC is the best zoning designation today,
Mhm.
right, that we have, but our comp plan, as you said, suggests it's a mixed use. So would the idea then be that this becomes part of the overlay district for the Eastern Corridor that would become mixed use overlay?
Yeah, and CC does allow for mixed use development. But yes, eventually when we do have that overlay, it will encompass both the north and side of that road.
The tripping hazard here that I see is if we allow CEC, but our future land use goal for this is mixed use, is what's mentioned as a proposed use for like a gas station, one of the uses allowed in CEC, will those be allowed in our future overlay districts? I doubt we would allow a gas station in a mixed use district. So it's, and we're not, talking about the use and the tenant necessarily, but we're not talking about allowable uses within the zone.
Yeah.
So, I can ask the applicant later if that's something that they're, enough down the road with that we need to consider it or what, but if we might consider later talking internally about whether or not there's a condition about providing certain uses that are related to mixed use. But mixed use doesn't exist yet, does it?
It does within the zone. They're allowed mixed use, but they're again under this
Well,
current zoning.
But a mixed use overlay district would restrict the uses or provide more uses potentially because of the overlay.
That's correct.
So we're gonna have this similar but different overlay in downtown. Probably wouldn't have gas stations as an allowable use in downtown.
Yeah, yes, definitely downtown. That would certainly be a conversation that I would like to have. It's not allowing it. I mean, but
Whatever this looks like to staff, I don't know, but it could be, again, part of the annexation agreement or a discussion to have with the Board of Trustees through the staff report.
okay.
But it might be something along the lines of agreeing to update the annex agreement by a certain date when there's an overlay district
Okay.
available. But I guess the concern from the, commission standpoint is if we allow zoning now and development occurs before the new zoning is able to be implemented, then we've created a window of I won't call opportunities. I don't think anyone's trying to sneak anything by, but we create a window where we might get the kind of development we don't want.
Yep.
In the final version of this, which we're not sure what it is. So I don't even know if it's fair to ask that in an annexation agreement, but it's worth maybe kicking around with staff and seeing if it shows up in the Board of Trustees staff report in some manner. And we can decide if we want to add that as a condition later, but
Yeah, and I'm sure Brandon can kind of speak to that sequencing as well if you have questions.
but I realize it's a staff report, so just clarifying staff and talking about staff opinions on things.
I have a clarifying question related to this now. Okay, so why not just have mixed use on both parcels to include commercial and residential?
Because we don't have that district,
It doesn't exist yet.
Not at all.
not at all.
It's a future overlay district that's being planned for the eastern corridor.
I see.
Yeah, so we can't zone to a zone that we don't have the regs for.
Okay. And do you have another?
And to that point, can I jump in for a second? I mean, that would be my concern. I mean, if trying to address this in the annexation agreement. So we can't, create a contractual obligation to rezone to a zone which doesn't exist or is not yet defined. And so what the annexation agreement currently reads is that, we've all agreed that the front, lot is going to be CEC and the back lot is going to be R3. And that in no way prohibits them from rezoning the property, or if they want to, create a residential use in that front property being required at that point in time to put an overlay over the whole thing, which is certainly a possibility.
Similarly, we've heard so far that there are no plans to develop these parcels yet, so we could annex them now, not rezone them until it's time to rezone, when we may have a mixed use.
We don't have the zoning that currently exists for the county, so we have to give it something
Something.
that exists.
Can it,
And we have to zone, we have to zone after annexation. Those tend to be in the same meeting, but Brandon cleared me up if I'm wrong. That's in our code. It's a requirement in our code. And I imagine it's a statutory requirement too.
Under state law, it has to be zoned within 45 days of annexation, I believe. Don't quote me on the exact number, but it's soon thereafter. But pursuant to our code, if the applicant does propose zoning at the time of annexation, they have to be done at the same meeting, which is one of the reasons, why we're doing this exercise now.
okay, and if the applicant doesn't have development plans yet, then why do we need to annex it now? What is the benefit to annexing now versus waiting 6 months?
I mean, I think one of the immediate ones is, getting sales tax on this. And this has been a town goal for, decades to get, these properties into the town, and just a convenient time, given, the change in zoning policy at the county to do this is like, the developer is going to want to be within the town before they even start conceptualizing any sort of redevelopment, because, at least under the county's current regs, they won't be able to develop anything on this property. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg problem, I think, but it makes, I think, the most sense for it to be annexed first and then worry about development after that.
Yeah, and we don't know what the economy is gonna look like in 6 months. So, it could be that if we wait, that annexation might not be as feasible as it is right now. I don't want to speak for the applicant, but
Am I allowed to ask about tax revenue on this
Yes.
property? How much are we talking? Currently,
I do not
As
have
is.
that answer. I can get with,
what is on the table if we don't annex it now?
There's current commercial, yeah, and I
It's
did.
minimal commercial as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah,
I mean, if you like to hoop the owner, I think, like, again, trying to put my head in the head of the owner of the property, behoove them to be in the county because the tax rate is lower.
And I also just gonna ask, you made a comment about, the town has been speaking with the applicant for the last 4 months about annexation. And given the recent change in Boulder County zoning, now it makes sense for them to annex. But from what I can see from the soil report, this discussion has been going on since at least 2022. So if the reason to annex now is because of the agricultural zoning, what was the reason in 2022? When it wasn't the issue?
I know we were having conversations about this exact annexation map and the zoning designations prior to Boulder County's rezoning of those lots. So that, at least I've only been here for 5 months, but at least through staff's perspective, I think now the applicant's wanting to start to act on that. And I don't know if that and.
You can ask them during the presentation, yeah. It's a good question, though. I think, since this is for the staff report, these are all good. I think the ones that Andrew can't answer that maybe be more appropriate for the applicant, we can ask.
Yeah.
Here in a little bit after public comment, which doesn't seem like there's gonna be.
I do have one more question, Pam, but I don't want to take up all the time. Okay, so when you said we need this to be annexed for the others to be annexed for continue, can you give me some context on what that is, what we're talking about?
Yeah, so we've got a property just to the north that was purchased by a family just maybe 2 months ago. And prior to in their due diligence, they approached town staff to see if they could annex in. We don't have exact reasons why they want to annex in. It's currently the farmhouse. They would like to develop a view. We don't have any plans or anything, but they would like to develop an ADU for a live-in parent and also add on to that house. It is assumed that that's not allowed within the county. So that's why that property owner wants to come. Without without the Tebow property coming into town, they don't have that, they don't meet the continuity. But I do expect, just because I've been in contact pretty regularly with the property owner just to the north, as soon as this comes in as an annex, we will have another annexation request within, a month or so.
And then others too,
Uh,
town property?
I know for sure conversations with the north, and I know it's a hard, this is what we want to do. I also know that there has been, I can't remember, Tamburello, or I believe, I can't remember the property, but I know that applicant or that property owner, prior to me coming, has been in conversations with planning staff and Victoria.
Yeah, we call that the generator development. It's kind of what it's been known as.
Yeah.
Across the street.
Directly adjacent. So right here, contiguous to this.
Oh, yes.
This in front of the Public Works building. So
Right.
this is already someone who's interested in development eventually with our overlay, Eastern Corridor overlay.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why I think zoning of this with an overlay, if we had it, would be ideal, because then we'd have a contiguous mixed use, zoning opportunity, but.
Where are we? Go ahead, sorry.
No, finish because I'll wait to get that.
When it comes to zoning, how many R3s do we have in Lyons?
Oh, that's not a very common, let me bring up the map here. That's a good question.
Size just doesn't smaller than.
I was just thinking with the Evans development, for instance, in order to get a density bonus from, depending on how you look at it, 6 or 8 units to 9 units, that applicant had to commit to affordability.
Sure.
So-
that would have been a spot zoning too. In a community of R1, it would have been an R3.
Events like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
whereas this is kind of sitting in what's supposed to someday be a much more urban environment.
Yeah, so we have
Could be a-
R3 is orange, we have,
I think it's across from town hall, right?
yes, sorry, clicking away here. So it looks like R3 zoning is really held to, I believe, the senior home.
Well, self-fit.
That's R3, but then looking at the zoning map, and then also here, the town, right there, that's
Yeah.
zoned
Right
R3.
across.
The townhouse, yeah.
And then just south across the river is also zoned R3. So it looks like there's about 4 to 6 properties within the town that are zoned R3. And, it's also important that we do allow for PUDR, which also gives some allowance of more density. So, you will have some densification in some neighborhoods that don't jive with our R1 or R2 zoning, so.
Even though it's 4 properties, it's probably something like 12 to 15 parcels, though.
Let's see, yeah, probably.
Just to, yeah, like what would otherwise be a single family home is a parcel. These are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it is, R3 zoning is not common within town proper, but it's certainly, whether it's straight R3 zoning or part of our future mixed use district, that densification is going to be baked into that overlay.
Are all of the R3s then that we have currently, either some providing some sort of supportive services or they are affordable? Are these townhomes are?
I do not know, but I can certainly.
I'm just wondering if R3 equals affordable.
No, that is.
It
certainly
doesn't
not.
necessarily, but
R
that's the
three,
instrument.
R3 equals higher density, not
That's it.
affordability. Per our land use code, there's no requirement within our R3 to have any, we do not have any inclusionary zoning within town right now, so.
But if we wanted to grant a certain zone designation with conditions of affordability, that could be a discussion.
Yeah, it certainly could be a discussion.
More of an overlay, like a PUD, like we just said before Andrew was on board with the previous plan, we talked a lot about it, the opportunity for a PUD or.
Yeah.
A residential affordable. I actually think it came up with the Evans property. So it might be something like that, but,
And, as was provided, and I believe it was prior to your joining the board, at least when we were conceptually discussing how these mixed use districts go, I think it's certainly a great place if we are going to provide inclusionary zoning, which was one of the Prop 123 strategies. I think once these overlays are created, I believe that's probably the appropriate place, just because they're more dense, so you have kind of that capital there to place those restrictions.
How long will it take to create this overlay?
So we're at staff, Cassidy right now is pulling we just got direction on kind of our Prop 123 goals. We've been working on pulling together kind of like mixed use zoning for small recreation towns, which luckily there's a lot of examples in Colorado of that. We will be coming in front of this board, hopefully in the next few months, starting drafting that ordinance, and then it goes through the text.
I think it's on our workshop for the next meeting as a
Great.
draft agenda item. So we'll talk about it. There won't be any language to bat around, but the concepts will be there in 2 weeks.
The big time, kind of what captivates the most time, it seems, for that code is going to be mixed use districts tend to have pretty heavy design guidelines. So it'll be working through. I know we've done this exercise before, so we're trying to data mine what the community and what the PCDC and the VOT have worked on before, and try to bake that in, bring in some new ideas. But I had put together a fairly aggressive schedule a while back, but we've just not been able to follow it just because other current planning has come up. But that code rewrite will take, to get the proper public input to do it well, it should take at least half a year,
Yeah,
if not longer.
yeah, please.
Just at a relatively high level and to the degree you can trust my math on paper here. I did look up the county search tool, property search tool, and found that the front property tax is about 41,000. The town of Lyons gets about 13% of that, so we're talking, $5,000 or so to the town per year.
Thank you.
Currently.
Thank you. And I can also get with Cassidy, our finance director, and try to get some.
Yeah, get,
Sure.
solid numbers.
Yeah, but I trust that
That's
completely.
very helpful.
Here it is. You were talking about, we were talking about access. I want to go back to this just.
Yeah, please. That's your
Was that-
expertise.
But you were going back to 1968, a plan, or,
On the ISP, the survey,
yeah,
which is number 8 on item 4.3, you go to the HTML agenda, it just shows a
yeah.
really simple, I would barely call it
Yeah,
ISP,
okay,
but a very
okay.
simple property definition plan. It's not the one that he's showing right there.
I'm
Okay.
trying to find it.
In that, it references the right of way for Highway 66, but it says varies, which is
Mhm.
true, but not as helpful.
Yeah,
And then the other one shows an exception recorded in 1968, and
oh, I see it, yeah.
if you look at it on Google Maps, it's kind of obvious that there's something else going on that property than what else is happening down the highway, so that all makes sense, but just knowing what those are might help add clarification to a potential annexation agreement.
Okay, yeah, I was talking about, yeah, because 66 does have an access control plan, I was just looking that up.
Yeah, it does.
And it keeps changing.
Yeah, okay, yeah, as I say, and that's what the access road that you're talking about is, yeah, okay, because I was just saying that, I know they have something newer than, okay, that's where I'm going with that, because they did, yeah, and they want to close things and make it, yeah, very good, okay, and that's, they consider them, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, there's
Okay,
there's a wide open apron right now with almost full access, which, you know, it being this close, and your transportation planner, you can ring it, it being this close to an intersection,
Sorry, no, because-
there will be probably not heavy closures, but there will be closures of that apron and kind of consolidated access, if not, you know, a required access road to the rest of the properties.
yeah,
And that needs and will come from CDOT when that time comes.
yeah,
That's, my understanding is that CDOT has expressed a willingness to work very cooperatively with the town in planning here.
okay,
Much more so than the very first, plan that they put out.
they recognize the importance of the access to Highway 66 and 36 to the town, yeah.
And this, the use, the proposed, or maybe proposed, you know, gas station there. And again, I won't speak, but at least in my mind, from a planning perspective, it seems like that's probably going to be the anchor tenant for, at least these properties. But I don't know.
Question on that, because that's a good dovetail, and I realize that we're talking about annexation and zoning at the same time, I think that's appropriate given how we're approaching this. But there will be opportunities for more staff questions as we get into the separate items. Sure. Even though technically this is just the front commercial property. So a development of these properties and this zoning, these would be major, I forget the words we use, major and minor development.
Yep,
reviews?
major developments.
So this would be a major development review. So whatever this is, it could be anything. It doesn't matter. It'll come up to the planning commission and then go to the board of trustees for review and approval after annexation and everything. So
That's correct.
meaning like, it's not like we're allowing anything used by right staff review where there would be no public input going forward. There would be a lot of public input.
That's correct.
Going forward. So I think there's a reasonable kind of backstop here based on what I expressed as a concern earlier. And again, we can ask more to the applicant later, but just to let you guys know, we should consider that also, you know. Any other questions for the staff report as is? Bridges. Oh, the only other. The zoning criteria that you went over, you didn't go over the annexation criteria in your staff report.
I was gonna wait.
You wanna wait on that?
Yeah, if that's okay.
I think it's okay, and I know since we're talking about zoning, this is probably not a concern, but I was just running by you, the question to staff. There's no municipal use as part of, I forget the exact wording, but the one about municipal use is one of the criteria. There is potentially access to our municipal zoned and owned properties through this one, especially in the back. And so I don't know if that sets that criteria into motion in any way that maybe we're not capturing
Okay.
in the report. So totally up to you whether or not that's true, but if you know the answer to whether or not that would be a concern through zoning or be a concern through annexation, or if it's not even really a concern to you at all.
Yeah, at least the plans that I have seen, kind of stay away from the town's property. So I don't think we'll be looking at wherever that access road goes, or, you know, the shared access to these properties along that corridor. I would envision that it would be just south of the town's property.
Whether or not it would matter R3 versus CEC or whatever, would there be a better placeholder for future access to our municipal property based on the zoning we choose today? And I don't think there is, but do you agree that there's probably not?
I do not think so. And I think securing R3 zoning, you know, whether that changes or not, this is a large piece of property. So this would be, at least in the housing space, it's a big win for a larger property to be developed in R3.
That reminded me of the last question I didn't ask. What is the unit density for R three? Is there any kind of math, napkin math even that's been done on what might be possible number of units if this were to be developed for an overlay?
Yeah, so, let me pull up the code real quick.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're
I was
you're
gonna
good.
use that next, so it's perfect. And I was gonna ask about, mixed use, what the density max would be for residential use, well, we just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, mixed use will be whatever we want it to be.
Right,
Yeah,
It's an overlay district.
so as far as kind of the minimum lot size, which is gonna guide how many ways this northern property can be chopped up or subdivided, my apologies. We're looking at for my teams or my meeting window is always for some reason what I'm trying to read. So we're looking at 1,000 square feet per dwelling unit for 2-family or multi-family dwellings. So we've got, how large is that back property?
Owner operated by the town or government housing authority. I think number one is 2,725. That's our number. Part A, not B.
why do you say that, sir?
I think you read 1,000 B.
Oh, yeah,
Part B
sorry.
is owned by the town. The part A would be
Oh, I see.
private development, so 2,725.
Yeah, so let me just do the math. It'll take me a minute.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I've got 1,000 windows open at this point.
So good.
Just give me a second.
The areas are not on the ISP either.
Okay.
The areas are not on the
Oh, they're not.
ISP. They don't have to be, but it's pretty common. This is a pretty bad ISP. There.
I don't remember the acreage of that back lot. Let's see.
Yeah.
Why don't you all deliberate and then I can, while you all are discussing, I can do the math. That,
Put you on the spot.
no, that's, you're
It could be
totally
casual.
fine.
There's no one in the audience. Before applicants are waiting patiently, probably.
I'm going to go to Boulder County here.
Legal description of this parcel, incredible. It's like 15 paragraphs.
They took their square footage up too.
Yeah, that's a
164,620 or 827.
164, say it again.
164,827 square feet.
So like 50,
Divided by 20
Yes.
27, 25.
I think so.
Yeah,
6.78
60.
acres. That's from the county's
Oh, yeah, but
search.
you probably only get 80% of those because of
Okay.
circulation, so 40 to 50 units. So that could be, I mean, it's a triangle, so you're not gonna, yeah, sure, maybe 40. It doesn't matter, like, it shouldn't affect our decision. I was just curious what we're dealing with. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Andrew on the staff report before we move into would be public comment next? No. Okay, nothing's changed on Zoom, I don't think. We don't have any citizens. Brandon, twice. Brandon, are you a citizen?
No, no. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
No, you're fine, don't worry. That's Steven. Yeah.
Okay.
We're voting on each parcel separately.
That's correct. There's a resolution for zoning for each parcel, and then there's a resolution for the annexation of both parcels.
Yeah, so the staff report covered everything, and then we're just gonna, right now, we're on the lower parcel along the highway. And we're the proposed zoning, the CEC, so after the applicant has a chance to report, actually, the applicant should have been before public comment, sorry, we'll go back. But after the applicant has a report, then we have a chance to put this into motion to discuss.
Great.
And that
I'm
was my-
sorry.
That is the applicant's turn.
Yeah, no, I got you. Thank you for that. And I had just skipped over it looking for words that looked familiar. So yeah, we'll give the applicant a chance finally to speak, and you know, you heard the staff presentation and questions, and you're welcome to report or present on any of those things if that's applicable to you. Otherwise, the floor is yours. Tebow LLC.
Hello, can you hear me all right? This is James Dixon.
Yes,
Yeah,
James.
and just for procedure, and if you can't, that's fine, but if you have the ability to get on camera, that would be great.
I can in about a minute or two. I gotta go snag a camera, so if you just bear
No
with
worries.
me. Oh, okay.
You are, we believe you are who you say you are.
Okay. Yeah, so appreciate you guys taking this. You know, I don't really have an elaborate presentation. Kind of as Andrew alluded to, we're very early in the process here, so we don't have a beautiful development plan and things like that to really present. The question was brought up as to, you know, the timing. Really does not have anything to do with the recent downzoning for Boulder County, although that is really an impetus or the final straw. But being as the site, the buildings on the site are likely close to the end of their life. I mean, you all drive by them every day, but they're not very good buildings. The site is being underutilized, so ultimately it makes sense to annex into Lyons so that we can tear those buildings down and redevelop them. And then with that, I'd be more than happy just to take questions. Might be more productive than me jibber jabbering.
Sure, and just for the record, this is the resolution for the rezoning of 4545 Ute, which is the lower parcel of the two. But we kind of have broken procedures to kind of talk about it all at once. So if you would be okay answering questions about potentially the annexation and the zoning right now, we can have opportunity later to do more of that if we want. Would that be okay, James?
Oh, absolutely. It makes perfect sense.
Okay. Well, maybe I can start us off. There was, some kind of, I don't know, you might best call it a rumor of what the use of the property might be, and that a gas station might be an appropriate use if everything lined up development wise and tenant wise. And I was just wondering if you would like an opportunity to speak to that, or if you were able to provide any context around that rumor.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And we are talking to a fuel station. Behind that is actually another fuel station that has had interest in this. And this would be really the hard corner. The site is too large for just a fuel station on its own. So we would anticipate approximately a 5,000 square foot inline retail building that would go to the east of that fuel station. And I believe I included a sketch application, but if not, I did provide that to you guys. It was a building similar to one that we've done in Louisville, although very small to that, which would be more of the inline 1,200 square foot ish spaces that would accommodate a lot of local services and things like that. So envision hair, nails, insurance agencies, dentists, those types of tenants typically occupy that type of building.
Okay, yeah, I do recall reading that in the application, so I appreciate you clarifying it again. And I know it's early, so do you at this time have any understanding of the right-of-way restrictions that might be subject to your property regardless of annexation or zoning?
Well, our engineer has looked into it a little bit. We're going to have to figure out something through the light there, because the property to the west, I don't believe has enough right of way to be able to give. And then there's a ditch. We anticipate boxing the ditch through our property, so it would, kind of out of sight, out of mind as far as what would be visible. But we do have to figure that out. But unfortunately, again, we haven't kind of gone to that level of, and to figure that out prior to annexation.
Okay, so just, we won't hold you to it or anything at this meeting, but the boxing of the ditch would probably be at the intersection, so it allow for more flexibility of what needs to happen for access. Is that what I would understand?
My understanding is the box in the ditch would happen slightly north of the intersection. Andrew, are you able to pull up that site plan by chance that had the fuel station and the inline retail, and then I think it showed where that box would be ditched?
I'm not familiar with boxing. Is it
Box.
covering over top? So it looks like a road, with the
Some-
water flowing in?
Something, yeah, some sort of encapsulation of it, but you might
Culvert,
need
maybe,
to clarify.
culvert.
That's what I understand.
Yeah.
Is that documented in the annexation documents? 'Cause I just don't understand which one it would be by title, Andrew, if you know. I remember reading those words around possible hair salon or whatever.
Yeah, I saw it in there too, on it.
In
Letter
the
of
letter of
intent.
intent, it talks about, there's just no drawing of the.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if your drawing was included. I don't know if it's needed for this meeting, James, but I don't think we have it.
Okay,
Andrew
well,
didn't
I'd
see
be
it.
happy to get it to you guys, I mean, tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow morning. So that we have an understanding of what our initial intent is, I guess, with the site.
Well, that would be helpful, I think, for the next step after we're done with this is to go to the Board of Trustees, and assuming we approve the resolutions and vote on it, then it would be helpful information for them to have, even if we don't have it.
Okay.
can I ask about the letter of intent?
Please.
Okay, so in your letter of intent, you said maybe the hair salon and the nails and maybe like a fast casual food and maybe a convenience store. So I looked on Tebow's website and your list of clients, and you have like Family Dollars, pawn shops, Cadobas. Are you thinking about maybe those here? And for outdoor, REI? Because you have REI as a client, and you mentioned outdoor and yellow eyes.
That would be a small.
I will personally call REI tomorrow, but I do not expect a positive outcome on this site. Yeah, so we have about 1,000 clients or tenants. So we have everybody from REI down to the folks that you see here now, down to even more mom and pop shops. It would be likely that the kind of tenants that would occupy a smaller space in this market would be more of a mom and pop and or a franchise type model then it would likely be a national chain, aside from the fuel station. With that being said, I can't say that it wouldn't be a Qdoba, but it with traffic and population and rooftop counts, national tenants typically have a box that they must fit into. And a lot of times the rooftops, in lines aren't gonna, fill that box for them.
However, regardless of what is presented in any development plan, I mean, tenants change, it can always change, right? So it could be anybody in there, so.
I totally agree. Yeah.
I've got you, here, I'll pull it up. I've got the concept plan. My apologies. It was sent by, Mr. Clifford some time ago, so I'll pull it up. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Oh, there, okay,
Can you fill it up?
yeah.
Well,
so, make it-
Again, my box was in the way. Always something. Let's see. 125 does.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, oh, no.
That's great.
Thank you.
Rose
All right.
gas stations, oh, I see.
Yeah. So as you can see, we have the the gas station on the hard corner, and
That's
then
very helpful.
there was some question about access. So we sort of anticipate access would be going through to the generator development kind of through our property. So we anticipate a shared access with them. And then the retail plaza is sort of what I was referring to as far as a inline retail building. And then the zoning up where we're looking for the R3 zoning, We don't have as much as even a density study or anything on that. We're by and large a commercial developer. We do own some residential and we have developed residential in the past. But we are not experts on that. So we'd likely bring in a partner or somebody to partner with us who brings more expertise on that.
Obviously, this would be, bringing a lot of great business for the town. I'm thinking of the 2 gas stations just down the road that are already in town. I could imagine at least one of those possibly going out of business if this is here. So there's a trade-off. What do you guys think when you see this?
May I chime in on that real quick?
Yeah, if I may, James, before you do, I will say that, as a commission, I think it might be more appropriate for us to discuss the merits of that at the motion.
Okay.
That coming up, but as far as asking James, what he thinks about it as applicant, that's totally appropriate.
One of the fuel stations that we are in talks to move here is already in the town of Lyons, and I have asked them if they would close that other location, and they said no. Fuel stations work very much on a convenience and access point of view. So if somebody's heading westbound here, they're going to stop here, go in. If the other station is on the other side of the street, that would hit the traffic going eastbound. So that fuel station in particular is comfortable with 2 locations within Lyons.
Also, isn't the one closest to this intersection on county property?
Yeah, the
So I don't,
7K.
we don't even receive tax benefit from it either.
Let's see if we look.
Unless I'm wrong about that. I thought that was the case.
But
The one next to Spirit Town, is it in town?
Yeah, so one is the street down the
Okay,
town
never
limits.
mind, sorry.
it is. So we do have gas stations on either side going in either direction. So what are you saying, Jim? Sorry.
Well, he said,
So-
he's gonna mention that you pump it.
Let's let,
Yeah.
that's what the applicant.
Okay, yeah. So you were asking me again. I'm sorry.
Well, we already have gas stations going in either direction. So we have one going east and one going west. So what was your point?
He didn't
The
mention.
point-
pump.
The point, I guess, of what I was saying is that fuel stations, exist you can have a fuel station on every corner of a major intersection in a city. So they coexist very well. And as I mentioned, the fuel operator, if we reach terms on this site, is one of the other locations, and they will continue to keep both locations.
Let's see. Okay. Because I'm just thinking if one does go out of business, it's already here, then there's an environmental concern for that parcel. It makes it difficult to.
I don't think that's appropriate for this time.
Sorry, okay.
Yeah, and if I may chime in, it is part of planning's review and it's within Lions Thrive as well. In order to consider annexations, it's really important that you're not stealing away businesses from our traditional downtown core, but at least the uses that have been mentioned, they're not really the uses that tend to locate into our kind of traditional downtown. There's more kind of nail salons, dentists, what we're already listed. So staff feels comfortable that this isn't gonna, we're not going to be pulling businesses out of our downtown core and they're gonna be locating into this shopping center as well, if that helps.
And that applies to the outdoor rec business,
Sorry?
the outdoor recreation business.
Yeah, all those would,
It wouldn't conflict with like the mountaineering shop.
again,
It sounds like
I
it's
think
related.
the applicant.
So this is time for the applicants, questions. It's not, it's not
Sure.
conjecture as to what future development may or may not be. Honestly, we don't know, right? And at this stage, we're only considering the zoning of the property, not a specific development.
Sure.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, James, really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Next up, which I desperately wanted to get to before, was public comment. I don't think we have any written correspondence. There hasn't been anything distributed. Okay. And it looks like we still have no one present for public comment, but just for the sake of asking, would anyone like to make public comment as a citizen? Nope. The applicant has a chance to respond to public comment, which seems like it's probably not gonna happen, James. But if you have any final comments as the applicant, now is the time for that.
Yeah, I guess I have one response. I was reading the minutes from the prior meeting, and there was some comment on there from, I think, two respondents that said something about we're trying to do an end around or something on the 5-acre rule. I wasn't sure kind of where that was or kind of what that was coming from, because I think one, we're under 5 acres, and two, we've purchased these properties over years. And so I wasn't sure if, I wanted to make sure those comments were addressed, that, there wasn't an end around, or we weren't trying to annex under 5 acres to get around a public vote. Or otherwise it would be a very long plan there of several years.
And this, James, just for your clarification, it's 10 acres along the eastern corridor, so this doesn't fall anywhere near, so there might have just been some confusion by the person that made those responses, but this certainly falls well under our requirements, so for a public vote.
Just want to make sure, we have we bought the one property several years ago, and then we recently bought the back property, and certainly weren't trying to do anything funny here.
All right, thank you for the clarification. Okay, with that, we have the need for a motion so that we can discuss, and the motion would be to approve or not approve, and I cannot make a motion, so entertain someone else to make a motion to approve specifically Resolution 2024-12, which is the rezoning of 4545 Ute Highway at the Tebow annexation to CEC Commercial East Corridor. Someone make.
I move for approval of resolution 2024-12, right?
Yes.
Recommending the rezoning of 4545 Ute Highway of the Tebow annexation to CEC Commercial East Corridor.
Do we have seconds?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion for approval. Now we can discuss internally, the merits of that zoning. I think, if there's context around annexation or the zoning of the back property that helps with discussion of the zoning of this property in the motion, that's appropriate. So we can put all that on the table, and in some fashion, we might just talk about the whole project, knowing that we're only really motioning on the front property at the moment for the front parcel. So any thoughts? Yes.
Just a comment. I know that for years there has been a desire to have commercial property along the frontage of the eastern corridor in general. And so this would be sort of at the heart of that and advance that objective that's been longstanding. And the purpose there is that we would get both increased property tax and sales tax from that process, and that would be beneficial for the town. In addition, if there were to be development in the form of building and structured development, then there will be use tax during that time. So from a revenue perspective, it is a positive for the town. In my opinion, based on the rate.
I'm really excited to see more activity in this corridor. I think this something would be great here. I'm not as excited about giving this zoning today. I would like to wait for mixed use overlay, and Tebow being a very experienced, intelligent developer. If it's not a gas station, if that will or will not work with the mixed use, I mean, they can do something else. They don't have a development plan yet or an idea of what they want to do necessarily with this land. I think, they've held the land for years. So, if we're losing $5,000 in tax revenues now on the existing commercial, we're not really losing much by waiting 6 months, 8 months more. And maybe if we decide to wait, then we will really try to accelerate the mixed use zoning creation. And then this will fit in with the rest of the area. It will all look according to the same design standards.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. One thing I'd like to check on, and I realize that this would be taking the commission's time to do so, is in our comp plan, which is kind of what we're here to do, is to uphold municipal code and the comprehensive plan. Each one of these items that has a legend, so it's kind of like a zoning map basically, but the mixed use has a description in our comp plan of what that looks like. And if you guys would give me just a second, or maybe Andrew, if you have it handy, it might be good to put it on the screen for the sake of recording and discussion.
Yep.
And while you're doing that, I'll read it and we can go over it again there. So the mixed use, land use color that's on our comprehensive plan, future land use map, of which this falls into, is mixed use, MU. And the primary land uses listed are a mix of retail, office, restaurants, and other commercial uses, which may include attached residential units like townhouses, row houses, small scale multifamily residential buildings. Supporting land uses, which I guess are kind of like accessory, light industrial, manufacturing, public facilities, civic uses, recreation, and parks. There's a density comment, which I can skip. Basically says 3 stories, 16 units per acre. The characteristics might be worth reading. This is sort of a description of what the idea is here. It says this category is predominantly located along 36 and 66 and acts as a gateway to Lyons with high visibility from tourists. And in fact, if you could zoom in on that big paragraph at the bottom, and I'll just read it while it's there. High visibility from tourists visiting Rocky Mountain National Park. A horizontal and vertical mix of uses encouraged, particularly on larger sites. Site layout and building design should be pedestrian and bicycle friendly and well connected to nearby uses and destinations. Frontages should be reserved for commercial uses. The adaptive reuse of historic or vacant buildings is encouraged. And there is a possibly historic vacant building across the street. So I think that's what that's about. So today we're talking about zoning. So we're not necessarily talking about the specific building design or the layout, but the applicant did provide a concept plan. So I think it does kind of open the door to discussing the merit of a proposed concept design. I don't think that the concept sketch necessarily aligns perfectly with this, but I think the designation of CEC as a zoning is in line with what we want to see for this property on our future land use map. So like, it basically, not to be mean, but if the applicant hadn't provided that sketch and we had no idea what their plans were for it, we would probably have the best information available would be that CEC is the most appropriate for what we think it should be in the future. And that begs the question of whether or not as a commission, we should have an opinion on tenancy and use beyond what zoning says. Does that make sense?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, mixed use would give you commercial and residential.
Yeah, I think he's not gonna mute himself.
But now it would be together, but just split on 2 parcels, residential and commercial. Instead of residential and commercial combined on one
But we
parcel.
don't have-
residential and commercial.
Yeah, and we don't have mixed use zoning, so I think
Correct.
the zoning proposed by staff is perfect. It fits within what's proposed in the comp plan and what's trying to be beholden. I think the only thing that's tricky about what we know about the application is just that we have an intention behind the annexation of the design, and we probably shouldn't consider it in our resolution today. So I don't like the design proposal, but this isn't about the design proposal. It's about the most appropriate zoning if we annexed it. So the first 2 resolutions, sorry, I'm being wordy here. The first 2 resolutions are what should these be zoned if they're annexed today? Doesn't matter if they're going to be annexed today, it's just what should they be zoned? And so we should decide what should the front zoning be, what should the back zoning be? And then the third item the third resolution to vote on is whether or not it's annexed. So I think we should, this is my personal recommendation.
Okay.
I think we should approve the 2 zonings as recommended by staff, the first resolution, the second resolution. And then if we want to talk about whether or not annexation is appropriate, we should save that discussion for the third resolution. Because they're happening together, but they're 3 different discussions. Does that make sense?
But once we
And
approve,
Chair Evers, if I could chime in real quick, I mean, I 100% agree with that. The discussion during this should be confined to the zoning of the property, not future development, possibilities, not the annexation itself. It really should be for the zoning of this property.
Because later we'll be able to look at the development, yeah.
Yeah. So to bring it back to the comp plan, thank you, Brandon. To bring it back to the comp plan, I think the proposal from staff is appropriate. If this were to be zoned something for Lyons, it should be CEC from what we currently have. We're not gonna create a new zoning today. We're not gonna create a new overlay zoning. But with the tools we have available for us, this is the right lever to pull. So that's my personal opinion.
That's interesting. Why wouldn't we decide to annex it first, and if we annex it, then we zone it?
I had that question before the meeting.
That seems
to-
like the order of operations here.
To Planner Bowen, and we actually don't know, and perhaps Attorney Dittman, you have a reason for the sequencing?
For the planning commission, it doesn't matter, to be honest, because, none of these actions are final. For the board of trustees, it is very explicit that you annex first and then zone. But since yours is just a recommendation, the order of operations is not, it's not legally important, I should put it that way.
But if we don't approve the resolution, it won't go to the Board of Trustees, will it? Or no, we would, I'm sorry, it will go to them. They'll just say, we
Yep.
go to them saying PC doesn't approve. Got it.
That's correct.
Correct, yeah, it'd be a recommendation of, it would be something else, or in the case of the annexation, we recommend that it not be annexed.
Yeah.
But so the order really doesn't matter, because all it is like yes, no, or something different, not so much this is done at the end of your decision.
We do the annexation first.
We cannot, because we've already
You
started.
cannot, it's already been noticed.
What motion on the floor?
But I don't think there's any real, I mean, there's no harm in any of it, as Brandon pointed out, because it's all going as a recommendation to the Board of Trustees, but there's no harm in saying this is what the zoning should be if it's annexed. And then if we say we don't recommend annexing, it kind of says, if you disagree with us, this is what we think the zoning should be.
Okay,
That
okay,
makes sense.
got it.
No, and my opinion is, as long as we, yeah, I mean, it's not like we're signing up for a gas station today, we're just signing up to rezone it. So come into something that we'll later be able to review and just think if it's appropriate for the town. There you go.
If it's annexed.
If it's annexed, if it's annexed,
So
there you go.
That's.
Yeah, there we go.
I think we could go ahead and vote on this unless you guys want to kick it around a little bit more. The resolution again is just for the southern parcel. And designating it as CEC, which is the closest designation appropriate for what we think is in our land use map in the comp plan.
Okay.
You guys be okay putting a vote to it?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we do that? The toggle on your right, to the right is yes, to the left is no.
Right is green, left is,
Look at that.
One-
Very
one-
fancy.
one line is green, two lines is red.
And then there's a great reveal to see.
Yeah, because you don't see it there.
Okay, unanimous pass, resolution 2024-12.
Oh, very high tech.
All right, thank you for that. I'll turn it off. Let's jump procedurally into the next resolution, 2024-13. And we're gonna go through all the steps again, but we might do them quickly depending on how we approach it. And this is recommending the rezoning of 4602 Highland Drive to R3 high density residential. And again, this is the back property as the staff report said. So staff report, there's an opportunity to clarify what's on the table if you want, or anything else.
Yeah, so again, just for the record, this is 4602 Highland Drive, the rear parcel. All legal descriptions. All the findings are the same. I just combined the findings just to make things simple. Again, it's staff perspectives, it's staff's perspective that, again, since housing, affordable housing is important to the community, it's mentioned several times within all of the strategies within our comp plan, securing an R3 zone that is this large, is in my opinion, just my opinion, we're setting ourselves up for at least the tool or the arrows in the quiver that we have right now. This is the best lever that we have to secure density. And I would certainly, if this were to come in as R1 or even maybe even R2, you would certainly receive negative feedback from staff that this is inconsistent with our planning initiatives along the eastern corridor. Go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, one question I have for you is the shared concept design site plan would imply that the parcel, or I guess we'll just call it a parcel line, would be moved north eventually. Does that in any way change your opinion on the proposed zoning? I assume not.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I do envision the square footage, and that's why I just didn't provide that analysis. Just knowing that even looking at the concept plan, that there will have to be a lot line adjustments. It's really hard for staff to find a proposed unit count or, so. I think as the site flows, I do agree that perhaps the petrol station isn't the highest and best use in a mixed use corridor. But I do think further down the road, there could be discussions about how the other side of the commercial, those other tenants, how that could be turned into mixed use in the back and then grow that into the R3. And again, that allows us more flexibility moving forward.
Claire, what were you gonna ask? I'm sorry. We did work once upon a time, Barney, Debbie and I were the only three remaining members. We did work on a draft design guidelines for the Eastern Corridor. Were those accepted and codified, or they still exist as a draft?
No, they were pared down, I believe, but we do have commercial design lines or design guidelines for the commercial or for the Eastern Corridor. Again, as we really dig into mixed use and really how to tailor commercial and residential uses together, I think they will need to be altered or at least re-looked at again.
Please.
I actually drafted those. And they do apply to the Eastern Corridor. I think we ended up with two iterations of it, one that applied to downtown, one to the rest of it. The notion at that time was that we should revisit them after the comp plan was completed. We've not done that. Whether we would need to revisit them prior to development, and it would come at development, not zoning or annexation. They would apply at the time of the development proposals. And whether we would have time to develop new ones prior to action on this, I have no way of estimating.
But we could, to maybe staff to help me clarify this, we would be able to use those design guidelines in a development review forthcoming before, if it came before an overlay district was established.
And for the record, those are codified in section 16.6.110.
Oh, look at that.
And the hotel actually volunteered to comply with them voluntarily.
Right, before they're codified.
Yeah, that was part of there.
Yeah.
That was part of that.
Okay.
That's all I had on that. Do you want to jump in?
Well, Planner Bowen, you started this report by talking about R3 as it relates to affordability and how great it would be for our town. But again, R3 does not require affordability, but a PUD overlay, the way we could do it now, would.
No, again, we have no requirement for inclusive zone or inclusionary zoning within town, but as part of that agreement. So PUDR sets up kind of this contractual zoning, and it gives the town more negotiating power to do so. But no, right now, it's a straight zone. They have the entitlement to build. They can be all market rate. By saying affordability, I guess I mean more naturally occurring. We add to the housing stock of Lyons. So with more supply, hopefully, if economics is hard, but that's, we've all seen that supply and demand, and hopefully, I do know current development trends are smaller units, and especially if the intent here is to provide duplex, triplex units, whether they're deed restricted or not, they seemingly would be more affordable than the stock that's traditionally in town. Again, that's all, there's no hard plan behind that.
Can I ask a follow-up question though? Because in the comp plan, affordability, and this is related to your question, affordability is a big target and goal in the comp plan, and we don't have a lot of ways in which to implement them yet, because we don't even have a definition for affordability in our code, right? Affordable housing. Would it be appropriate, this is just a staff question, would it be appropriate to have in the annexation agreement a suggestion that we would circle back to a PUD overlay for the R3 zone for affordability, to establish affordability goals.
So I'm gonna step in here. Yeah,
Please. Oh, we're talking
Okay.
about the zoning application agreement, aren't we? I'm sorry.
yeah, we're not, we're not talking about annexation agreement, and just generally, I don't think would be appropriate because that zone doesn't exist, nor do we know what it looks like or what the requirements are. And so I don't think that, we can create a contractual obligation to say you're going to comply with the future zoning classification, which we don't even know the parameters of. We
Well,
can
I should-
agree to work in good faith towards, exploring, a future PUD overlay, but requiring the developer to, to do that now, I think would be inappropriate.
Yeah, I agree with that. It would be, but would it even be appropriate to suggest in the annexation that there is a conversation to be had around a PUD? And PUDs are in our code. A mixed use
Yeah.
overlay district is.
I mean, maybe you could do something like the developer and the town agree to meet, discuss the possibility of a future PUD. I mean, that's about the extent to which you could require anything.
To in the intent of meeting the town's affordable housing goals, would that be overreaching?
I think it's just too early at this point to assign affordable housing to this property. It's just not. I just give it the level of review we're doing for the zoning. I just don't think that's something we can require.
And again, I'll reiterate, that as part of both of the mixed use, since they are densification, I think that's where we can really fold in this inclusionary zoning. And again, not selling promises to come in the future, but that's at least the bare bones model that I had provided months ago was, Boulder County's 12% across the board affordability. So when that time comes and when we have that code, hopefully that's where those conversations would begin.
Well, I appreciate you entertaining the questions. My day job is to ask mostly dumb questions, just to make sure that they're off the table. So I appreciate you guys entertaining me. Please, go
I
ahead.
have a motion on the floor. We're getting into discussion.
You're right. I was asking staff though, if that would be an appropriate thing to put it in an annexation
Well, I
agreement.
meant earlier, we're getting into deep discussion, but we don't have a motion on the floor.
We don't. So any other questions for town staff on the report?
Real quick, the zoning, we wanted, the zoning to go to R3? Okay, yeah,
That's what's on the table.
That's that recommendation.
yeah.
Okay. If there are no more questions for staff, we can move to the applicant report or presentation. I know it's already been given, James, but if you want an opportunity to speak to this specific property or to any of the things in the staff discussion we just had, you have the time to do so now.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't really have any comment on this back one, but be happy to take questions.
Okay, any questions for the applicant on this specific property in R3 proposed zoning? Nope. All right, thank you, James. We do not have any written correspondence, right? So we do have time for public comment. Looks like we still have no one available for public comment. So we will move on to any final comments from the applicant or any response. I'm assuming no, James.
Still good.
Still good from 30 seconds ago. Thank you for confirming. So now, yeah, thank you, Barney, for directing us. I think now is appropriate time for someone to introduce a motion on resolution 2024-13 rezoning 4602 Highland Drive to R3 high density residential.
Okay, let me go back to the. Okay, propose a motion to
Approved.
approve resolution 2024-13 4602 Highland Drive rezoning. Did I get it all?
So R3 high
Oh,
density.
to ours, yeah, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
We have a second. All right, thank you, Barney. We now discuss the motion for specifically the zoning of this property.
Good comment. As Planner Bowen indicated, I believe that R3 zoning is the strongest tool in the current toolbox for enabling the potential. I'll say it that far back, enabling the potential for affordable housing expansion. And, I do think that we're going to take additional steps and have additional discussions as time goes on and as the process unfolds.
Yeah, I was thinking what it would be like to be the applicant during this conversation about zoning. We're talking about gas stations. It's not especially fair, but I do think since the design was put forward, it's okay to discuss it, but it shouldn't impact our decision for zoning on this motion.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, I mean, the RSV and higher density is usually better at major crossroads, and that's what this is, that's what actually what my, it good, means it has good access to. Well, the Lions Fire bus comes right through there, and which one of my neighbors takes regularly to work, which actually has really good, apparently a lot of people riding it. Now, it's not a, buses can come and go, and that buses come and go, but there's a lot of potential, I mean, usually having a higher density near intersections is ideal. I imagine we can ask them to maybe put a bike path underpass right under the road to connect into the bike path going down the future bikeway going to Boulder and into Lyons. And may want to do that anyway, but there's lots of opportunity there for providing access and possibilities. And by the way, I went on this property on the northern side. One of the reasons I've been looking at this property so much on the assessors, I actually went and visited the residential part during the Census Bureau. And I was like, oh, there's that property. It's actually beautiful back there, by the way, I might add. It's like you're going there, it's like all because of the ditch. So it's actually quite a nice property. It's like, wow, this exists back here. This is really pretty.
All right, any other,
Yeah.
comments of?
I do.
Oh, yeah, please.
So I don't think I quite understood, but right now, they couldn't request a PUD zoning designation. They couldn't come to us with a plan and say, we'd like to propose a special PUD. Instead of just an R3, we'll figure it out later. Here's a PUD we propose for this annexation. Could they do that?
For the PUDR, they would have to have a development plan in hand. We would have to know in order to grant that PUDR. A PUD it's an overlay, so it's not kind of, we can move into a future with a bit of not knowing what that looks like if we're just using the straight R1 through, or a state through R3. But a PUD is tied to a site plan. It's tied to what's actually happening on the property.
It still needs a zoning, doesn't it? Even to have a PUD, you still need a base zoning.
Ag. If it would have to come in with something and a PUD is not an option to come in.
There is no site plan, so
But if there were,
if
they
then they
put one
could come
together,
in
they would
PUDR. That's correct.
reapply with a PUD. Instead of
correct.
asking for a general R3 TBD, what that's going to be, there could be a PUD, here's what we're thinking about doing for residential.
And it wouldn't be, here's what we're thinking, that it would be, here's what we're doing, and
Yeah.
this is what the town is going to approve.
But a zoning overlay is not a zoning, it's an overlay. So doesn't there still need to be a base zoning that applies to the property before an overlay can be applied to it?
That's correct.
So we'd still have to give it R3 or something.
You wouldn't, you could just give it what it already has. which
Well,
is
we don't
now-
have
But that's Boulder County zoning.
That's Boulder
So-
County zoning. It's not the city zone, not the town zoning.
But we could give it anything we wanted, like industrial or something. I mean, that'd be silly, but we could.
I guess, again, from a planning perspective, PUDR would be great, but again, I think that runs the risk of we're having a very tailored site plan and we do not have all of the mixed use district locked in. So at least right now with some ambiguity, we can secure if it were to happen tomorrow. And we've heard it from the applicant. There's no real, they're in the business of kind of the commercial development. I see that as that's the pending development of this lot. But R3, again, it does get us to our comp plan goals. If we were to do a PUD with a specific site plan, we might in 6 months be like, oh, shoot, we shot ourselves in the foot because that doesn't really jive with what we're setting up. Does that make sense?
Can I put it another way? Because I want to understand it too, and I'm glad you asked. A PUD kind of implies that you have a willing partner who owns the property. So the property owner wants to be a partner with the municipality so that they can achieve two goals together or aligning goals. But if you don't have a property owner who's a willing partner, not to say that Tebow is willing or unwilling, but anyone could be willing or unwilling, you still need to have a zoning for that property that exists with somebody who just wants to use it by right, which is their right, right? So like, you still have to give it a zoning. And then if Tebow turned around and sold it to someone else who was a willing partner, well, then there's an opportunity. Or if Tebow themselves were willing partners, there's an opportunity, but we won't know that until a future date. They could make it part of their annexation application, I believe, but that's not a requirement in any way. Is that right?
And at least we're setting the expectation or that since it's underlying zoning district is R3, that PUDR that comes in will have that density and that we're just providing more flexibility within that R3 district, if that's a better way of saying it.
Someone already said earlier, yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective, R3 would allow for the development of an affordable housing set of structures. It would be allowed. And right now, it's the only zoning we have that does. And so I think taking the appropriate step. There may well be, and I believe there probably should be discussions and additional steps in the future at which we can have additional discussions about how to obtain the kind of housing on that property that is best for the town.
Commissioner Scott, you have a question?
I think maybe kind of, I wonder if this is an example, where I live in Lions Valley Park. It was always in the text of the PUD that they would allow affordable housing. It was not in the original platted plan, but when the original developer, Mark Holmes, the Summit Housing Development that was eventually built now, that is the affordable housing. When the Mark Holmes said that they couldn't build on that property, it was now open for someone else to develop it, and because it was in the text of the PUD, they were able to, the people, I guess it was someone whoever came in, I guess I don't know if it's someone, the name ended up being that came in and built that property. It was, I don't know, it's not used by right, but they didn't have to, where they didn't have to go through this whole process like, because it was already part of the PUD, they were able to go and develop the property and they created the affordable housing. They didn't have to go. It was already included in the PUD. They didn't have to go back to the board and get approval on the line and I mean, they did lots of public hearings and presentations, but they didn't. It was already included, so they're already allowed. Is that where you're trying to go?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that as a case study, because I think that's helpful to understand what we're dealing with right now. That's R3 zoning for this property.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And that language was actually on the original plat. So they didn't
Exactly,
have to do
yeah.
any replatting or anything. So that basic framework was.
The framework was
set
there, exactly. That's the word.
So that there was no need for a replat. There was no need for, a full on, I mean, there was, of course, I wasn't.
They have-
But can I say, it's so for the intention of, we need to provide a zoning for this property as part of this process. And it can't be a PUD because that's an agreement with the landowner.
Yeah,
We need to provide a base zoning regardless, and the best one we have, to Barney's point, is R3 to allow for future opportunity. More questions?
Which is opposite of what you're saying.
yeah, I mean,
I think I get your point, but it's the opposite of what we're doing here.
you need to have the reason, you need to have a zoning there. Yeah, I mean, I think they already had like for Lions Valley Park, they already had a zoning in there for R1. The developer came in and proposed R1 zoning and had proposed that PUD to meet the needs of the town to do both a single family, and they put the text in for possible affordable housing.
But that was part of a PUD agreement.
PUD, yeah, that was a
So
PUD.
that is an overlay to an existing zoning. The existing zoning underneath the overlay did not have affordable housing.
Exactly, you're okay,
There's no way for us to do that with our code right now.
exactly, that's exactly it, that's what I'm trying to.
So we need to forget about overlay
Okay, yeah,
districts
great, okay.
as far as this motion is concerned, but for discussion, it's totally fine to understand what's ahead of this property.
Yeah.
So we make sure we're making the right choice now, but for right now, we have to give one of the zonings we currently have. None of them say anything.
Yeah, none of them have, I agree, 100%.
Shall we vote? Are we ready for that? Anyone want to stop us while we consider voting? All right, let's do it. Button on the right. Switch to the right is yes, switch to the left is no. 1, 2, 3. Grand reveal, all passed unanimously. Cool. Let's move on to the final resolution of the 3 related to this property. And that is resolution 2024-11, recommending the annexation of the Tebow annexation. That's a fun name. But I think based on the context of the previous resolutions, that's clear. So same motions as before, I shouldn't say motions, same process as before, staff report first.
Yeah, so again, we're here to discuss the Tebow annexation, 4545 U Highway and 4602 Highland Drive.
Andrew, can I stop you? It says preparing live streamed. Is that something we need to be concerned about as far as our obligation to provide?
No, it's live stream.
Oh, okay. It is recording either way, so, okay, sorry, could go ahead.
So now we're discussing both properties simultaneously because they're both a part of this annexation petition. We received a complete application. The Board of Trustees have declared through a resolution that it was in substantial compliance with the application materials were in substantial compliance with our town code and state statute. So we initiated annexation proceedings, referral requests, and neighbor notifications. Again, you all have heard this before. These two properties have been annexable under the current IGA and will likely stay. You can't call the future, but will likely stay in the IGA that is to be re-upped later this year. Staff does not have any concerns with the annexation of these two properties. As far as criteria go, again, we've already gone over the proposed annexation map. But as far as criteria go, let me pull those up just a second. So there are quite a bit more that we'll go through for this one, but the criteria for the record again are in section LMC section 15.1.3.10. So property is eligible for annexation if not less than 1/6 of the perimeter of the area proposed to be annexed is contiguous to the town. Go through that, but again, all of these criteria under this heading can be met, and it meets the 1/6 continuity rules required by both state statute and the LMC. B, a community of interest exists between the territory proposed to be annexed and the town can be met. This annexation is an important anchor point to the eastern corridor and is vital for the economic and housing development of the eastern corridor. That being said, there is a bit of a gap that we have not secured an annexation directly to the west of this property. But in looking at the comprehensive plan, you know, this is kind of the linchpin to the rest of these annexations. So I guess this is the community of interest and staff's perspective that will help to reinvigorate and redevelop this property or this entire corridor and help to kind of pull this and make it more Lyons, if you will, not Boulder County. The territory proposed to be annexed is urban or will be urbanized in the near future and is integrated or is capable of being integrated to the town. Existence of subparagraph A above is the basis for a finding of subparagraphs B and C, unless the Board of Trustees at a public hearing finds that at least two of the following exist. Less than 50% of the adult residents of the area proposed to be annexed use of any of the recreational, civic, social, religious, industrial, or commercial facilities of town, and less than 25% of these adult residents are employed in the annexed town. So this, I mean, there are tenants that currently are on that property, but as we heard on Monday, one and did not ask for where tenants live, you know, because we're expecting that these are incorporated into the town. But I know one lived in Longmont, one lived in Lafayette. So this really isn't an applicable criteria, again, because we're looking at the complete redevelopment and to really start this process of the Eastern Corridor with this property. At least 1/2 of the land proposed to be annexed is agricultural, and landowners consulting at least 1/2 of the total express under oath and intention to devote the land to such agricultural use for at least 5 years. There is a greenhouse on the back. It's been in and out of use. As far as the front parcel, there's never, of course, been agricultural uses. The rezoning to agricultural is a fairly new zoning designation in Boulder County. So again, planning staff, it could be applicable, but in the framework of our long-range planning goals, it's truly not agricultural. We don't have established grazing or, you know, there's, you know, truly the only, you know, agricultural uses that are going to stay, and all ditch companies were referred as part of this process. Ditches have to remain the same. They have to, every agreement that every land use that is incurred on this property, all of the ditch rights will remain on this property. And then it is physically impractical to extend to the proposed area those urban services that the town provides to all its citizens and upon the same conditions. Standard does not apply to the extent that any portion of an area proposed to be annexed is provided with or within the reasonable near future be provided with service by a quasi municipal corporation such as special district. Again, this, or not again, but this criterion can be met. We can provide services to this lot. The expense of providing those services to this lot will be placed for the developer to
Who
incur.
the developer will.
That's correct. So this doesn't put the town in a position where we're having to spend money to pull services to these lots. Number two, no land held in identical ownership may be divided into separate parcels for annexation without written consent of the landowners unless the parcels are separated by dedication, street, road, or other public right of way, or sorry, public way. Both parcels are under single ownership, so we don't, and we have title reports to support this criterion. No land in identical ownership that comprises at least 20 acres. I'm not even gonna go through it. This is not 20 acres, so this is not applicable. No annexation resolution pursuant to section 15.1.330 of this chapter, and no annexation petition or petition for annexation election is valid when annexation proceedings have been initiated for the annexation of part of such territory by another town. In this case, again, we have no other municipal, there's no other municipal interest in this property. It's Boulder County, and Boulder County would like to see this come into the town of Lyons.
Sorry, why is that again?
What?
Why would they like it to be in lines?
Boulder County, they're not in the business of urbanization. They do not require, just their code does not require the types of services such as sidewalks, drainage, stormwater, all of those kind of urbanized services. So I know in Hannah Hipley, the principal long range planner of Boulder, when she made the presentation for all of these, the down zoning of all of these properties, that's what she stated as well, is that Boulder County, it's not in their interest to try to redevelop these properties, and they worry that if that zoning change would not have been downgraded, potential uses that were allowed in Boulder County would not fall within our long range planning efforts. So Boulder County would like to see these come under our community's control so we can control that land use. And I don't remember, that meeting was maybe 3.5 months ago, but that was at least Boulder County's perspective, is that they would like to see these come into our community.
But they'd rather lose land and have to worry about it.
I don't think that's it. I think they want to give the town of Lyons more authority over the properties that are adjacent to its town limits.
The county doesn't want to be in the urban land use business. That's for towns to do, to incorporate and to provide those kind of utilities that.
Now, if this was a 35 acre lot or a historic ag use, I'm sure it would be different. But since these are already seemingly, built out and in need of redevelopment, they would rather see that occur within our town limits than Boulder County.
This isn't unique. There are other properties in Lyons, this 3 mile plan that the county owns that they would like for us to annex. It's been communicated to us. Not all of them have commercial properties on them, but.
So 5, if an annexation will result in the detachment of an area from a school district and its removal to another school district, again, that's not applicable here. It will become, once the residential components are to be developed and we have more firm plans, the St. Vrain School District will be involved within that process. And there will be fees and lieu that or some arrangements that will have to be made to follow our land use code and their expectation. Number 6, the parcel annex must not have the effect of extending the town's boundary more than 3 miles in any direction. I won't again go through the rest. This criteria is not applicable. We have town limits within 3 miles, and again, we can provide service. Number 7, prior to the completion of any annexation within the 3-mile area, the town shall have in place a plan for the area that generally describes the proposed location, character, and extent of streets, subways, bridges, waterways, waterfronts, parkways, playgrounds, squares, parks. All these things can be met. The subject properties are referenced and are further in line with the Lions Lake comprehensive plan, but then there are also utility studies and other corridor studies that have been adopted by the town in previous years. Again, I will say that with the caveat that as there seems to be interest in the eastern corridor to start redevelopment and development of properties, it will be important for the town to really start trying to make firm plans and kind of cohesive plans within the eastern corridor. And that's not me trying to get more work, but that needs to be a part of our process as this starts to occur. 8, if a portion of a platted street or alley is to be annexed, the entire width of the street or alley must be included within the area to be annexed. We're not annexing any streets or alleys, so this isn't. The town may not deny reasonable access to landowners or owners of easements or franchise adjoining a platted street or alley the town has annexed. Again, this is not applicable at this point.
Is Highland Drive not a street?
Yeah, I was to say, I was wondering about the same question.
But the entire width is a part of it, so I don't think it applies either, but
I can get with Aaron if that's in our street network.
I don't think it's gonna affect.
I don't think it's in Lions. It's in Boulder.
Yeah, I mean, it was a previous staff directive to just look into the applications of maintaining Highland Drive, but I think that's part of this criteria too. But I don't think they do real anything.
10, annexed areas will not divide tracts of land to prevent further annexation of adjoining parcels. Again, this, the subdivision of land has been proposed as part of this petition. So all of the land that we're not disjointing any other properties, we're not creating any strange lots that will not be able to be annexed in the future. 11, the land to be annexed and the uses proposed for the land use shall contribute to the orderly growth of the town and shall generally conform to the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. Again, I've stated this before. I would agree that perhaps a tenant of a petrol station is not currently or may not be the highest and best use for our future land use plans. Right now, it does fall in step. So being kind of held to what we have in the books right now, staff finds it appropriate. And staff, again, staff found that the proposed zoning also falls in step with our planning efforts. 12, certain public facilities and amenities are necessary and must be constructed as part of any territorial annex into the town in order that the public need may be served by such facilities. These facilities include, but not by way of limitation, arterial streets, bridges, public parks and recreation areas, school sites, fire and police station sites, and storm drainage facilities. The annexation of lands to the town shall be shown not to create any additional cost or burden on the then existing residents of the town to provide such public facilities. As stated before, all access to town utilities, all connection fees will have to be incurred by the applicant. There's no school dedication, at least on the table right now. There's not been any dialogue. We are right now working on the annexation agreement, but again, most of that will be about utility connections and a water right dedication. But we are, and I have not received, referrals were sent out to all special districts, including the school district. We haven't received any referrals, and they were due on the 12th. So how our referrals work, if a referral is not received by some town staff by the time kind of that door is closed, it's seen as a neutral referral. So no comment. 13, petitioner for annexation shall be responsible for paying the town's full cost for processing the annexation petition from initial discussion with planning commission before submittal of the petition through the approval and recording of the final annexation documents, unless otherwise approved by the board of trustees. This has and will be met through a utility perspective. It will be met. as part of our general process for all land development applications, an escrow account is set up and staff, we have a spreadsheet that we fill out and we log our time. And that has been complete. All those agreements have been made. And I'm sorry, that's it. 13 is the last criteria.
So that's the end of the staff report.
That is the end of the staff report.
Very good.
Well, my staff recommendation is to accept the annexation as proposed.
Any additional clarifying questions or questions to the staff based on the report?
I don't know if I can ask this here, but I would like to learn, in terms of like water dedication,
Mhm.
how that's done when we don't know what's gonna be developed here yet.
Yep, that's a good question. So Aaron, our utilities director is currently working on, right now, it's to cover what uses are existing. So bringing the existing uses into town, bringing them up to the town standards. That's really the only metric we can use, and that will be what's agreed upon in the annexation agreement. So we will, in the annexation agreement, it will be spelled out kind of the water dedication and shares that have to be have to be bought by the applicant and paid to the town for those water shares and tap fees. Once a development plan is brought to the table, then any additional use that may or use more water, they will of course have to purchase those water rights at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
And your recommendation was to approve the resolution with
Oh, yes.
a condition
That's
of,
correct.
of completed
Annexation. agreement.
annexation agreement with the board of trustees.
Mhm.
So if and when we get there for the motion, I might ask for your help on that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
Has staff done any research on the historical performance / relationships of the applicant in other municipalities? How things have worked elsewhere?
So, and the applicant just can speak to this. The applicant owns quite a large amount of commercial land in Boulder County. I have not reached out to different, that's just not part of our workflow. But, you know, again, you can't drive really anywhere in Boulder County and not see a T-bow, a property, or a plaza or, you know, something. So they do own quite a lot of property within Boulder County. I have never heard any, you know, bad relationships that,
To be concise, that's not part of our application process for annexation.
that's not a criteria that staff makes.
Clarifications on staff report. Once again, James, we have an opportunity for applicant report and presentation. If you have anything you want to add to this resolution concerning the annexation of the property.
Yeah, I don't have anything over and above what kind of we've already talked about, but again, be happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions specifically for the applicant on the materials applied for in the annexation? Okay, I think we might have asked all the questions to you, James. Thank you.
Okay.
There were written correspondence submitted. It appears there's still no one present for public comment, either online or in person. And James, just to confirm, you don't have a need for a final comment or response to you.
That is correct.
All right, thank you. And we appreciate your patience in this process. You know, we don't have a lot of annexations in Lyons because we're a small municipality. In my time on this commission, you're the first real application. We had one other that was a flood property, but this is kind of a new process for us. So thank you for the patience.
Well, of course, yeah, I'm happy to go through it with you guys together. We'll be partners, so.
Yeah, you'll do it again in a few days, I think. Okay, so now is appropriate time to introduce a motion on the resolution. That resolution being 2024-11, recommending the annexation of the T-bow property. Would anyone like to make that motion so we can discuss?
I'll move for approval of PCBC resolution twenty twenty-four 11, recommending the annexation of the Tebow annexation and
Condition.
with the condition of an annexation agreement provided to the Board of Trustees.
I capture the condition that you recommended.
Yeah, I'll just read it. An annexation agreement shall be approved by the BOT prior to the recordation of any annexation documents.
Okay, the motion's on the table to approve with condition as stated by staff. Do we have a second? We have a second. Okay, we may now discuss as needed for the motion to approve the annexation and the merits of approving it. Would you like to reiterate anything from earlier?
I'll reiterate that I'm excited about seeing growth. I'm not excited about approving annexation on an idea that's half-baked.
I think one thing that's been standing out to me, just because I was bringing up the Lions Valley Park, I think this is like kind of how a lot of annexations from the county to towns work, or county to city, meaning you have to, like, I think the Lions Valley Park, like where I live, I think it was zoned, they created this zone when they bought the park, the people bought the property from Laverne Johnson's family. And they had to be considered a part of the town, they annex, they had to make it like make it a single family zoning, and then when they got a developer in, they brought a developer in who was willing to develop it. And make it single family zoning, and then they put in the condition for affordable housing. I think that's kind of how, and that's kind of similar to where I'm thinking this process is going. I think this is, I don't know, is this unusual?
This is just the annexation of it. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think the application leaves a lot of open-endedness to what an applicant can submit.
Yeah, exactly.
And the applicant submitted the design that was just to give us an idea of what it could be, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
but they're not beholden to that design.
Yeah, they weren't beholden to design when they annexed it.
It also technically wasn't part of our packet, so we don't necessarily need to consider it, but it was presented by the applicant, so we can.
Yeah.
But, you know, yeah, the process, as you said, is still kind of, this is the first step of
Yeah,
having it be a part of your town so that you may decide if the owner is a willing participant.
Exactly. That's where I'm going. Yeah.
I have a question. So if we do annex this, then neighboring parcel could also request to annex. So there's one that might request it right away. So now we're going even further away from having a mixed use corridor because we're gonna be bringing them in on different zoning designations. And it'll be even harder to do a mixed use overlay because we have now multiple annexations potentially before we have a mixed use.
I can confirm that the neighbor to the north, and again, they have no expectation, nor do they want to redevelop the property except for an ADU and adding on to a residential home for a mother-in-law.
Well, if I may, kind of piggyback on a comment, I think it's a really good one. Where am I here? That property is colored mixed use in our land use map. But the land use map, as those of us were here when we did the comp plan kind of intimately know, it's an aspirational land use map. It's kind of like when opportunities arise, this is what we'd like to see it be. Knowing that, and there's actually undevelopable property colored red in here too. That's too slopey probably to be realistically developed. But it brings up a good question of when the timing is right. I think, you know, Lions, the decisions we make around stuff like this kind of determines our reputation as a partner, as a municipality partner that's willing to work with landowners. And, you know, we could wait until all of the dominoes are set up perfectly before we try to knock one over, but even trying to predict what the future might look like might be too impossible to be able to do that. And my fear is we may freeze ourselves into a mode where development will never happen because the conditions are never going to be perfectly aligned at the right time. It conflicts with my personal values, because like personally, I don't think the highest and best use of this corner lot is necessarily the concept sketch provided. But I also think that anything there, to your point, is better than nothing there. And so I think, you know, we have to decide, is it worth annexing now because there is a willing participant landowner who wants to do it, and they're willing to cover the fairly fairly high cost of annexation, all the utilities being brought in and the improvements they'll have to do to the property to annex it. It makes the property more valuable, but the upfront cost to be able to do that really cuts out a lot of potential landowners being able to even address those costs. So my point is like, I think we kind of, my personal opinion is I think we owe it to the town and to signal to future landowners and developers that we are friendly and willing to participate in the process without digging it down and getting it rutted in the mud of trying to make sure everything's perfect first. I think in an ideal world, we would have an overlay district established. But even if we had it established, we couldn't apply it to this property during annexation. I think we would have to rezone it. Actually, no, we could, never mind, I take that back. But it doesn't exist, so we don't have it right now. So I think the right thing to do is, again, my personal opinion, I'm not talking as chair, just Neil. But I think that we should approve this resolution, begin the annexation process, put it in good faith that the annexation agreement is going to include water dedication, utility fitness, and hopefully a staff directive around the understanding of street maintenance to Island Drive and to understand the full effect of that agreement. And then see what happens in the Board of Trustee review. And if it goes through, then they can start moving forward with development plans. And we'll still have a chance to review development plans against what our future understanding is for this area, even though it's not codified as hard as a zoning overlay. Does that make sense? A lot of words.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just thinking the way I see it, the zoning will be just approved, enabled the lower lot, the commercial lot, to be mixed use. So that retail, even with the concept plan that was put up there, the retail space that was drawn on that could well be 3 stories with 2 stories of apartments within the CEC zone. So it can be mixed use. The other property to the north of it, I don't think we want it to be mixed use. I think we want it to be R3.
Well, why would you say that? Because our plan here says we want it to be mixed use. You guys decided that before.
Because
right?
I'm saying what I think.
Uh-huh.
We want that property to be residential. We don't want it to have a factory and 3 or 4 little apartments.
Who's we? Are you speaking for yourself?
Me, yeah.
You, I see, okay. I'm just
Yeah,
going by the
so-
plan here.
Okay.
Somebody decided that.
Yeah,
Let's
somebody
just take a
decided
turn, like, for
they
someone's finished.
could be, that it could be mixed use and it could be commercial and residential. I personally believe that it was beneficial for the applicant to come forward with R3 because it enables it to be dedicated to residential as opposed to both commercial and residential. Now, the fact, for example, if it's an apartment building, it gets into that sort of grayish area that I'm not sure we've ever wrestled to the ground in terms of, is that more commercial or residential? But I'm thinking of it as residential. R3 enables there to be an apartment building there that could have 12 units, which would be, I think, sort of the right direction for the town. So that's why I personally support both the zoning and the annexation of each of these properties.
And a question, something that you said earlier, made me think of something that will probably be something we address in a hearing, I guess. You said you can't really drive anywhere in Boulder County and not see a T-boat sign, except for Lions, for instance. That would change. So that kind of concern that somebody might have will have an opportunity to be explored and addressed further down the line through the development plan review and hearings and such, correct?
Again, and Brandon can, I think it would be. unfair
Andrew,
to
can I
the
address this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Commissioner, I think you're exactly right. If someone was concerned with that, with this developer, specifically, they'd have opportunity to state that at the next hearing if they want to. It may not be relevant to what we're deciding, but they can certainly bring that up as part of their public comments. As part of the development, process itself. If there was a PUD on this property, there'd be additional opportunity for comment then. I mean, there's a lot of things that have to happen between now and whatever eventual development there is. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for public comment, for the public to help shape what this eventual redevelopment looks like.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess my concern with staff reaching out to other municipalities or property owners is a lot of that comment could be very objective, or subjective, sorry, could be very subjective. And I don't think in criteria, in kind of brick and mortar, this is why we're doing things. I would not personally feel comfortable, even a staff member from municipality that I trust, you know, I would not feel comfortable using that as kind of truth to make a decision on, or to provide, you know, input.
And legally speaking, I don't think it'd be part of our scope, you know, at least for annexation and for, you know, zoning for us to explore. Now, if it comes down to entering an agreement with them on a development, it may have some relevance, but at least at this stage, it really isn't a relevant factor. We have to just take the code as it exists and apply it to what has been presented to us.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but I'm thinking of another business that didn't pay taxes and moved to another town. We don't do diligence like that. When we decide to annex, we don't do our diligence.
That is not a factor, you know, for annexation and for zoning. Now, if someone wants to, you know, pull a business license, it's a factor about whether or not we allow them to pull a business license, to get a liquor license, to, you know, get a marijuana license to do the development of a property. That is a factor. But at least for this, we have legally have no ability to make a decision on that basis.
Thank you.
Any other points of discussion on the motion?
I just appreciate the reminder that this is a very early part of the process and there are many, many opportunities for public input and for more review by more bodies. And I think that's really important because I agree. I mean, you're bringing out some really good points. And I'm just not sure today is when to put markers in our mind for that
Yeah.
as we're going through the process.
I'm sure it'll be done. I have no doubt that the people will be talking to us. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the votes, we're ready to vote now. Discussion's over. But stop me if you have. Okay, let's go ahead and put them in. Again, it's the toggle button on the right. To the right, yes, to the left is no. Yeah, it looks like we're unanimous in approval of resolution 2024-11 recommending the annexation of the TiVo property. And with that, as amended, thank you, by the condition stated by staff previously in the motion. Because I'm not gonna repeat it. And also just as a reminder, this is not part of the motion, but staff directive to look at any potential street or right of way maintenance required from Highland Drive as part of the annexation agreement, if you don't mind.
Yep.
And if we don't know it, I don't think that should hold up the move to the board of trustees, but it'd be nice to understand that eventually.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Thank you,
There's no
everyone.
other- Yeah, thank you, Brandon. We'll go ahead and adjourn. Do you think we need a motion to adjourn technically a public hearing? Would someone like to
Motion
motion?
to adjourn.
Nice.
I can do that.
Do we have a second? We have a second. All right. All in favor? I think the vote.
One
Yeah,
person.
all right. Thank you. All done.
Whatever voted no on that one. Depends on the
You
meeting.
know if we need to vote on that one? I forget. I think
We do. We
We
have
do.
to, we have to.
Okay.
One person could say, oh no, I want to stay.